So it was the most watched American television event of all time. Thank you for whoever texted in saying it couldn't have drawn more than the World Cup, like the FIFA Cup. I guess not, but in North America, most watched ever. But beyond that many people tuning into the Super Bowl or to see Taylor Swift, whatever reason you needed to watch, it does bring up the question of what the future of sports on television is. Wanted to check in with Joe Flint, who's a staff reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Joe, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So, listen, we know that, the landscape is shifting, right? There was the big Netflix deal just a couple of weeks ago where they went ahead and spent a ton of dough to get WWE on their particular streaming service. So CBS carries the Super Bowl. It's their biggest numbers ever. But what's the future of these kinds of events? Do they stay on broadcast TV? Do they end up somewhere else? What happens, do you think?
Well, we're certainly seeing more and more of a migration of sports to streaming, just like sports migrated to cable a few decades ago. This past NFL season, we saw Peacock, which is NBC's streaming service, carry a playoff game exclusively, and that was a first. And next year, Amazon Prime Video will have that same game exclusively. So it is a migration. I don't think it will happen quite as fast as everyone anticipates. I know some people are thinking, how long till the Super Bowl is a streaming-only event? And I think that still is a long way off for lots of different reasons, including that, for most, the technology on live events is still not, and streaming is still not perfect. Every time there's a big live event that's streamed, you hear grumbling about people having issues with their feed. But I also just think in terms of the viewing public and everything, it's just a little too soon. So I feel confident in saying that is at least a decade or more away, and maybe even longer.
I wonder, though, like I mentioned CBS carrying this game, and obviously this turns out to be a giant hit for them. We know how many eyeballs they had on the network that day. But I'm also thinking as sports becomes more and more expensive and the cost of everything keeps going up, can broadcast even afford to pay for rights to carry these games?
Well, that's a good question and a valid point. And I do think going forward, the current NFL deals still have many years left to run. But when those are over, it's a good question of whether all those networks will be able to continue to pay the money that these leagues seek and get for their inventory. Especially, you mentioned CBS. I mean, that is a company owned by Paramount Global that right now is going through a very tough time. There's actually a lot of layoffs happening literally today at the company. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, certainly companies such as Disney, which owns ABC and ESPN, and Comcast owns NBC, these companies still have a lot of money to pay for sports rights, which are kind of seen in many cases as loss leaders. You get a lot of other value from them. But fair point.
I wonder, too, as I hear you describe this, I think to myself, let's say you're a U.S. college basketball fan, right? I'm watching games on Saturday. They're on either NBC or Fox. They've all got them, all the major networks. And you think to yourself, that's a giant money-making, I guess, opportunity as well. We know how popular that is, in the U.S. I could see something like that heading to streaming as well, right? Maybe they're not paying as much for the rights, and maybe some of the streamers, like a Netflix, for example, can afford, not many companies can afford to write big checks worth billions of dollars to carry something. You see that perhaps happening first?
Yes, and it's funny you mentioned the NBA here. Their current deal is expiring soon, and it is expected that their next deal, primarily will continue to be with big, cable networks, ESPN and Turner. There will be carve-outs, and whether it's Amazon, I'm not so sure about Netflix. They keep dancing around live sports. How much are they really committed to doing it or not? I think the wrestling move is a bit of a toe in the water for them. But Amazon, I think, is clearly going to be giving a hard look at the NBA. And who knows, maybe even Apple. But I think that they will still primarily stay with those companies. But those companies have streaming services too.
Right.
They need the sports content to generate and build those platforms.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? And we're starting to see consolidation there as well. I think they've obviously realized we don't do something. We're kind of last man out here. So you're seeing them get together, right, to be able to pool their resources.
Exactly. Just last week we had the news here that Disney, which is ESPN's parent, Fox, which owns sports outlets, and Warner Discovery, which owns the Turner Network, are all teaming up to launch a streaming platform that will basically be all of their networks that carry sports on one service. We don't have a price for it. We don't even have a name for it yet. But the idea is that it's, again, a way to sort of, A, do an experiment and see what the desire for this is, and B, kind of plant the flag out there.
I wonder, just to go back to Super Bowl off the top, I don't know if they can measure this one way. I thought I saw a study out today trying to figure out how many people were actually watching the Super Bowl for the game and how many were actually watching it for Taylor Swift. I don't know if those numbers are if you can break them down, but you kind of have to wonder next year. Let's assume Kansas City is not back in the Super Bowl. Do you see the numbers fall off, or have enough eyeballs now been there that they come back for next year?
Well, certainly, I think there was a Swift effect. All that for about 54 seconds of airtime she had during the game, but sort of we're all sitting there waiting for that next shot.
You counted the airtime that she had on the game?
I cannot take credit for that.
Oh, okay.
I saw another sports media reporter do it, so I wish I could, but I knew someone was taking. I don't know if you could bet on it in Vegas, but I'll bet you could. But so 123.7 million viewers. Nielsen just updated their figure. I mean, that's a big number to try to top for next year. I think part of it will also depend on who's in the game. But, yeah, it may be down a little, but the Super Bowl is always going to be this big, huge event, even on an off year. It's still going to be certainly around 110 million at least.
I'm wondering, by the way, we have to wrap up. I read today, I think the U.S. What leagues have merged now for the off-season football? Is it now the USFL? What's it called?
Well, right. There's the XFL and the USFL, and I think they're now the UFL. Okay. I believe that's correct, the UFL. Okay. I'm not sure how popular that'll be, but I'm sure it'll do enough of a little bit of an audience. Not 123.7 million.
I'm going to guess not very in the popular category, but we shall see. Hey, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. We appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks
for having me.
There you go. That is Joe Flint over at the Wall Street Journal. Imagine that 123 million people checking out the Super Bowl. Pretty impressive. Thank you, Taylor Swift.